Welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast. I'm Bela Gandhi, the founder of Smart Dating Academy and your host. I started Smart Dating Academy in 2009 because I had this crazy knack of giving people dating advice that actually worked, that I took. I've been married for almost 25 years, and now my company helps people to date smarter and to find love. This podcast is meant to bring more love into your life, no matter where you are and what you do. And we're here to bring more life into your love. Smart Daters, welcome back to the latest and greatest episode of the Smart Dating Academy podcast. Favor, if you guys listen all the time, and I know so many of you do, hit that subscribe button, okay? Hit the ratings, give us that little 5-star rating because you've been listening, and write something nice. And I promise you, this episode is going to be one that you're going to want to rank 5 stars. You're going to love this guest from Alberta, Canada, Dr. Jody Carrington. Jody, welcome to the Smart Dating Academy podcast.
Come on, Smart Dating Academyers. Listen, do we got a lot of advice for you today? I'm ready. I'm ready for this one.
Oh my God. So Jody's a renowned psychologist, has a great website, an amazing Instagram following, and is going to be starting her own podcast. And she talks about all things connections, creating connections in this incredibly disconnected world. But before we get into your work, tell us about you. You started to tell me your background and getting your PhD. I'm like, wait. All the listeners need to hear this. So tell us about you and dating and you and how you got here.
Okay. So I will tell you, this feels like a season in my life where I am doing my very best to break the mold of women. I grew up in a small town up here in Alberta, Canada, very straight, white, able-bodied, privileged kind of crew. And the idea was always very sort of like out of the box that I would, that women would get a doctorate or women would do these things. And so everything I loved and I learned, I grew up in this little place. Everybody knew the name of everybody else. But it was really, I remember my favorite teacher's name was Holly Nordstrom. And I remember where she was standing, what she was wearing. I have no idea what she taught me. I have no idea the literacy and the numeracy. But I remember the way she made us feel the day she had to tell us the then captain of our hockey team in this little town had been killed.
Oh my God.
And I remember thinking, I want to be like that. If the big people are okay, if there's somebody at the helm, everybody else is going to be okay too. And I want that. I want more of that. So I went home that night and I said to my dad, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to be like Mrs. Nordstrom. And he said, oh, good. You want to be a teacher? And I was like, shit, no, I'm not a fan of children. I want to make people feel the way that she made us feel. So it's so interesting. So then I went into this world of psychology and I knew that without a doubt, that's this whole relationship connection thing made so much sense to me. And my own story, comes to fruition years later. I write about this in my latest book where little did I know, my mom and dad had a baby before my brother and I were born. And they got married and they had us and didn't tell anybody. And my sister, my full biological sister, found us when I was in my late 30s, and she had just turned 40. And this idea of relationship and connection, and the fact that we're neurobiologically wired for connection, that it is the scariest fucking thing on the planet. And if you've been burned in any way, we need it like air. But the thing that can hurt us the most is that very thing.
Oh, and so I have goosebumps. Can you feel them all the way up in Banff right now? Wait a second. Hold on. Your parents had a baby, adoption, gave her up for adoption. Something happened and you didn't know until this sweet soul calls you when you're in your late 30s. I'm your sister.
They didn't tell anybody. So they left. It was like a home for unwed mothers that my father found. They made a big story because they grew up in this, little town. There was no phones or anything. And so they said, mom's going to go away to work. She was 17, I think, at the time. And so everybody believed that. And they bound her belly. And then she spent the last 3 months of her pregnancy in this home in Calgary. And the nuns were very clear with her that, nobody knows about this. This is, a bit blasphemous, but, where do you want her to go? And so mom chose to, the mom and dad got to pick a Ukrainian Catholic home. This is what they knew. And they held her, my mom held her for 20 minutes because she was crying when she came out. And so they just wanted to whisk her away. And my mom just went hysterical and said, I just need to see her. I just need to see her. And they said, are you sure you want to give her up for adoption? And she was like, I have no choice. I cannot disappoint my family in this way, but I just need to hold my baby. And so she had her for 20 minutes and then never saw her again. And my father came and picked her up, I think 3 weeks postpartum. And they just sort of looked at each other and said, okay, we never speak about her again. And they didn't. And, a couple of nights mom would say, they would cry to each other, but they never spoke about her. They got married, had my brother, and eventually got divorced, primarily because there was a big secret that they held and nobody knew. And we're close. I mean, like, I knew everything about my mom. I would speak to my dad a couple of times every week. And then one summer, I was pregnant with our first child. I had finally found a husband, and I was coming home to the farm for the weekend, and mom just said, hey, dad's going to come over for coffee. And I was like, that's weird. Like, they've been divorced for 20 years, but whatever. So he walks in, and my brother walks in, and mom brings out the lemon loaf, which is the universal sign of death. And everybody, mom and dad start crying. And so I'm like, oh Christ, somebody's dying. And they said, there's something we need to tell you that we haven't told anybody in 40 years. And I was like, holy fuck, maybe dad's gay. Like, I can't, what else
like,
could
what
you
could
be holding?
This be? Right.
Like, not a sniff that there was another one of us. And he said, your mother and I had a baby when we were very young, and we just need you to know that you have a sister. And both my brother and I were like, oh, okay. So like, it was better than death. So we were like, okay, cool. Like, that's fine. And then my father said, Jody, she looks like your mother. She sounds just like you. She's got her undergrad in psychology. And I was like, whoa, time the fuck out. You met her? And they're like, yes, we really just wanted to know about her before we introduced her to you. And so we just want to know, kids, would you like to meet her? And in my head, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, no time soon, like maybe next Christmas, because I was just the oldest and the only girl. And now I'm the middle kid. Like,
asteroid hits your world with the lemon,
right?
With the lemon loaf.
With the lemon loaf. And so then my brother, of course, is nicer than me. So he's like, of course, Dad, we'd love to meet her. And he's like, good, she's in the garage. Like a puppy.
Ambush.
And honestly, they were so lovely about it. They're like, okay, like, if you're not ready for this, she completely understands. And he's like, she's actually not in the garage. She's just on her way in her car from Edmonton. And I was like, what are you supposed to say at this point? So my brother's like, Joe, we got to do it. And I was like, okay. So in she walks. She looks just like my mother. She sounds just like me. We live 6 blocks apart from each other in university. We obviously never knew. She's married to a firefighter. Our kids, her son looks more like me than my boys. And and we fell in love. And it's one of those adoption stories that doesn't always go the way that it does for many other people. So we feel very lucky. But, that marked, I think, so much of this desire for connection and reconnection and just how painful it can be. I think I knew that in my bones. And it sounds kind of cliche, but I think many of us carry intergenerational trauma. I think we all know the stories of the women, the men who come before us. And when we sort of be aware of that and how it sort of plays out in our bodies and what we do with that for our children is so much of what I get to study these days. And when I left that little town, even before I obviously knew about my sister, I was like, this is what I want to do. And so I became a police psychologist when I first started, because I worked as a civilian member with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, which is our national police force. And I started to understand what it looks like when organizations don't look after their people, because I have a massive love for first responders, but we do a really shitty job of looking after them, and we do a worse job of looking after the people who hold them. And in line with this dating idea, you're only as okay as the people who hold you. And when you stay very connected, I mean, often I say this to the parents I've worked with over the years, you're only as happy as your most unhappiest child. And so how do we stay connected in those relationship places is the biggest skill you'll ever have, and the biggest skill you're looking for in a partner. Right.
Wow.
And so when I left there, sorry, go ahead.
So you meeting your sister is what put you into this line of work, or you had already been, you were a therapist already?
I was. Yeah. So I often wondered why I had such a conviction, and, what was this about? Why is this relationship and this reconnection? And just knowing, I think, that my mom and my dad had this big stymie between them that I couldn't ever put a word on. So I always had to be the funny one. There was something missing in their eyes now that I look back. And so when I left the police force and finished my master's and my PhD, I had to do I did my residency in the East Coast of Canada. And they said, you have to do a rotation with kids. And I was like, listen, I'm not a fan. And they said, you're kind of like when we think you'd be a good fit. And I fell in love. I fell in love with the tiny humans, and I did a postdoc in child psychiatry. And then I realized we know even less about kids and trauma than adults and trauma. And so I came back to Alberta. And this is the interesting thing, you see, because I went through my master's and my PhD. I'm now in my 30s, and I've dated, but now I've got this PhD. I am very clear that I want to be a mom. I'm very clear that, I would love somebody to share my life with. My focus had been getting this doctorate because I knew that's what I wanted my whole life. And I don't know if this was planned or not, but didn't necessarily want anybody to be in the way. And so I came back, of course, to this small town after I got this PhD, and I was like, oh my God, everybody's like, oh, you're a doctor. But the question always was, but you got a husband, right?
You got a husband?
You did all of these great things. That's really nice, Jody, but like, you got a husband. And I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. So then I was like, okay, I better get one. So can I tell you my dating stories?
Please. Oh my God. This is what the company is, Smart Dating Academy. So please tell us your dating story, Dr.
I don't know how smart these are, but I really think this is the best strategy on the planet. Okay. So my husband and I have been married for 15 years, and I step into this new city, into Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Really lots of potential options, but how do you meet the right one? I'm not interested. I'm getting old. My eggs are drying up. I need a fucking plan here. And I don't want to weed through the mess. Okay. I don't have time to go to the bar. I work at a hospital. All the nurses are on the unit, generally female. I play hockey. Everybody on my team is a female. Nobody is really in this dating pool. So what am I going to do? So it starts, this is the beginning of online dating. So I was like, that's it. I'm going all in on this bitch. Okay.
All in. So all in, baby.
I made the best profile. It was funny. And it was short, and it was like, I hope I am, it's something about, I think I can still remember this. It was something about like, I am a woman who, is well accomplished, but I really hope that chivalry isn't dead. And I really hope that, whatever. And so it was short and sweet and whatever. I thought it was really funny. And then I made this plan, because I was working so late at the hospital during the week, that I would have 4 dates on the weekends. Okay. I picked a beautiful coffee shop in Kensington, and I would schedule one for 10 and one for 2, because I am going to sort this shit out, because you got to kiss a lot of frogs. And so I'm like, let's line them up. Let's do it.
Let's make a conveyor belt. 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 10 a.m., 2 p.m. Boom.
And I had a very clear relationship with the baristas. I was like, nobody talks about what happens in here. Okay. You saw me earlier. No, you did not. Do you understand me? No, you did not. We are here on an interview process. So I had the time of my life, because so quickly we make these assessments, right? Oh, your pants are too short. No, your socks are too light. No, I'm 30 seconds in and I'm like, no, I don't know what's going on with that haircut, but this is not coming home to mom. And it was so lovely. And then I met my husband really, really too soon.
Because you were enjoying the dating process so much.
I hit the jackpot with me husband about 2 months into this dumb. And I like made out with so many incredible humans, and then got my heart broken by maybe one. And then there was, all of these ones that I was like, this is interesting. But I know in my heart, when you are in this way, the more professional, when you step into this professional way of operating, and you just sort of can be clear on, okay, here's my accomplishments in this way. Where we are least confident, we typically are least confident is in our ability to build relationships with other people. Now, it is the single thing that will determine how we show up in the world, how we enjoy life, who we get to sort of experience life with. But it is the thing that we tend to sort of garner the least confidence around, because you typically have to go through a few of them and get your heart broken and have to break a heart equally as painful. Okay. Particularly if it's somebody you love and respect or you have affection for. Breaking up and being the breaky upper is also equally as
It
devastating to
sucks.
your
It's
soul. Absolutely.
sucky.
And so the story in your head is then I'm not good at this, which the narrative, if we could switch that, is so much more about I'm building a skill set on being ready for the one so that when I step in, I am going to be all in. I'm going to build the skills. I'm going to practice in this way of trying to figure out who is going to be good at this. Because if I can find somebody who can navigate my emotions and who is well enough to be able to navigate their own, I am paving the path for something that is a beautiful thing. I've worked this hard to get this far. And now my only job is to invest everything I can into this relationship that is going to dictate how I show up, potentially who I have children with, all of those kind of things. Huh? And I just wish there was much more conversation. I watch this as our children are getting into middle school about what are you looking for in a partner, right? Why do you think this one's hot? Why does that matter? What happens when you get connection from this person and attention from this person? What are the differences between those two things? And I think there's so much around this self-exploration that will dictate how you show up at that first meeting and the second one, and really pay attention where your shoulders are, because it really tells me how confident you are in being able to step in to determine whether they are right for you, not whether you are right for them.
Mm. Talk a little bit more about this self-awareness process that you just mentioned. Like, how do we do this? I work with daters, right? So from your perspective, what is something good to do as your own practice in your mind? Because so many people feel gloom and doom. They feel like, I hate this. I hate dating. I've been doing this for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years unsuccessfully. Like, how do we rev ourselves up?
Can I tell you the most beautiful insight that I have learned? I mean, I've been a psychologist for 20 years, and I was listening to some research by Dr. Paul Conti, and he says, here is the two cornerstones of mental health, okay? Agency and gratitude. And when you are stepping into the dating game with the narrative that everybody's shitty, nobody's kind, all the good ones are taken, I have nothing to offer, they have nothing to offer, everybody on these online things are just catfishing, they're terrible. Okay, therein lies your first problem. Okay,
you lack agency.
You lack agency. So agency is your ability to be very consciously in control about who you let in your life, what you choose, how you look after your day. Is this a happy day for you? Are you going to feel the emotion of sadness and rejection and why you're 30 something or on your, second marriage at 52? And how am I ever, feel all of those things. Agency, when you step into one of the most important decisions of your life, which is who you're going to spend the most of your precious time with.
Amen.
Is so much about you have control over this. You get to choose how you show up, what you demand of them, and you are in control to be able to set the limits and the boundaries, and that this isn't something I like. This is something that I'm interested in. I would like to talk more about this. I don't need to, no, that actually isn't something that I think is kind of cool. And secondly, what I love about Conti's work is then that has to be predicated by gratitude. Now, gratitude also is this overused cliche bullshit. I'm thankful for the clouds and my husband. I want you to think about gratitude as a place of like the grounding force, right? Because in this moment, you are so thankful for what you bring to the world. If I were to ask anybody right now, considering getting into a relationship, here's the thing I think you should answer. Why is your prospective partner lucky to have you? What are you going to bring? What do you bring to this person? Why are they lucky? Why you? Of the billions of people on this planet, what are you going to bring to their life And in that, for me, often really flips the script in terms of I'm looking to, are they going to like me? Am I enough? Am I too fat? Am I too smart? Am I too skinny? Am I too dumb? Are they going to love my 3 children? Whatever these things. I come with all this baggage. Who's ever going to love me? Bullshit. I think that
I
so much
love
of
you.
that is how do I, what is good about you then? If you can't answer that question, nobody else is going to fucking find it.
Right. So who are you and what do you bring to the table? And that ground, right? And that's part of gratitude.
Yeah. So it grounds you in this place, right, of gratitude. And why I love speaking about this concept of gratitude, really the underlying factor of everything that I talked about is this idea of emotional regulation. Okay. You want to look for a partner who is very good at regulating emotion. And here's the definition of emotional regulation: how not to lose your fucking mind, how to stay calm in times of distress. What you want is somebody who doesn't lose their mind. And here's the interesting thing: the greatest lesson we will ever teach any of our children is how to regulate emotion. So I worked as a child psychologist for 10 years on a Lux psychiatric inpatient unit. Some of the most dysregulated babies you can imagine, hitters and kickers and biters and the ones that tell you to F off. I love those babies because it's never, and we always ask this question, particularly in psychology: what's wrong with this one? What's wrong with this one? This one got the ADHD and the ODD and the learning disability and they're a hitter and a kicker. You know what we don't ask? What happened?
Why are they, what happened?
And when you are in your dating process, I really want you to sort of understand that process, right? Not what's wrong with this one or what's right with this one, but what happened to this one? What's the story? And is that something that fits with my story? Is their family system something that fits with my story? Because we really get very individualized in this way of sort of dating people. But I will tell you, it makes it so much easier if you consider them as a family system. Because your ability to have relationships or connection to the people they're connected to will be maybe one of the most important considerations. You don't have to love everybody they love. You don't have to have a beautiful relationship with your mother-in-law or your sister-in-law or whatever the deal is. But knowing that they were loved by them first is important to consider.
So awesome. I love that. I love that so much. And you're right. Family systems make huge difference. Huge. And we don't know that when we're young, and we don't date for that, but we should.
We should. And so this idea, sorry, about emotional regulation is really like how not to lose your friggin' mind. And I often talk about this. The only way you learn how to regulate emotion is somebody has to show you how to do that. When you bring a baby home from the hospital, how they let you know what they need is they lose their friggin' mind. The job of big people. This is my favorite quote of all time. If you remember nothing more from this episode, this is what I'm going to give you.
I'm writing it down.
It hangs over my shoulder in my office because when I first read this by a dead guy named Ram Dass, it changed everything for me. He said, "We are all just here walking each other home."
Wow.
We are all just here walking each other home. None of us get out of here alive. And your job is to choose as beautifully as you can one of the best walkers you've ever met.
Who can walk? Let's go with this metaphor. Who walks at your pace? Who makes it easy to walk with?
Who, when you get attacked by a lion on the gravel road, doesn't lose their fucking mind? Who has the ability to be like, okay.
Let's jump behind the bush.
Yeah. One step at a time, baby girl. One step at a time, my sweet muffin. We're going to get this. We're going to do it. And it's like this idea of emotional regulation means when we think about this for kids, their job when you bring them home from the hospital is to cry and lose their mind. The job of big people is to walk them home. We innately, if I put a crying infant in anybody's arms in this moment around this globe, they would engage, in a rhythmic exchange in an effort to soothe them, to walk them home.
Right. We move them. Right. If you told me I've had 2 babies, it's like, what do? You walk, you soothe them physically.
Yeah. There's a rhythmic exchange that happens between big person and little person. And every single one of us have the ability in our bones to regulate the emotion of another human being, because as a human race, we all start in exactly the same place. The same feeling everybody on this globe felt first was this: bum, 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 the heartbeat of our mamas. And whether she's alive or you have a relationship with her or not, your understanding of emotional regulation is in your bones. And what we need most in the relationships that matter the most is not the words, not the fixes, but the physical presence of another human being who can stay regulated in times of distress, to not tell us how to do it, but to show us. And when you can do this, your partners can do this. But generally speaking, when you have been surrounded by people who haven't been very good at the walking, you can't give away something you've never received. So if you are dating somebody who's been told their whole life they're a piece of shit, or shut up, you get to your room, you're an asshole, their ability to give it away will be compromised. As well, this is historically true of women way more than men. Women have much more of an emotional language than men do. And so we tend to be in the emotional place much better walkers, because you can't, if nobody's never apologized to you, you can't give it away. So often we get in relationship with men who are very, as we've been taught to believe true, get the tough one, get the brute force, the guy that can save the world. And then what we struggle with is when we want to then apologize to them and they're like, they don't know how. Sorry, but if you didn't, if nobody has never looked that guy in the eye and said, baby boy, look at me.
Sorry.
I am so sorry. And not followed by the word but, because the quickest way to erase an apology is to insert but. And we do it almost every time. And it erases the apology. So if nobody's never given that to you, you can't give it away. If you have been surrounded by people who can, for the best part, regulate you in times of distress, and it often just isn't your parents, it's whether you had a grandma or an auntie or a good teacher, or a good coach, or whatever the deal is, we often have our village of people. And in our season of dating, who are the people that regulates them? Who are their best friends? What do they look like? If they ever came to them, as you're sort of judging this, to tell them how awful you are after the fight, you want to see, are there the friend? Do they have friends that would side with them? Or do they have friends that would be like, okay, listen, Grace, she's amazing, right? Let's figure this out. Yeah. You want to, I single-handedly attribute the connection of my marriage, the longevity of my marriage, to my mom. She is my husband's biggest fan. And the days that I want to throw punch him, I will call her and be like, he is and she's like, oh, okay, tell me more. Like, what happened? And then she'll be like, but you know what, hon? He's a pretty good dad. And he's crazy about you. And I'm like, yeah, you're right.
Damn it.
So you need your people who are going to regulate, and they need their people who will regulate, so that, because listen, conflict is part of attachment. Conflict is part of relationship. John Gottman, you'll know this, one of the most prolific marital researchers on the planet, says, listen, the one difference between the couples who make it and couples that don't has nothing to do with how much sex you have, how much money you have, how much alike or different you are. The biggest predictor of couples who make it and couples who don't is your ability to repair when things go wrong.
Yeah. Right. And your ability to turn towards each other to make that repair, right? What do we want to do? We want to screech out of the driveway. We want to leave, right? We want to do the things that maybe were done to us, or we never learned how to do it, so we don't know. But it's in that moment. There are so many times where I will tell my husband, Andy, of 26 years, right, I'm turning towards you right now. And this is an active effort because I want to avoid and leave, but I'm going to actively seek your help in this.
Nice. Yeah, and you know what is interesting? The only thing, so couples therapy is one of my most favorite thing to do these days. I love it because typically speaking, two people will come in and one really wants to work in the relationship. The other one's just there because this is like an ultimatum. And so they're both like this sometimes. And I'll say, so what brings you in? And they'll be like, she did, or he did, or this is stupid, or whatever. My only goal in as many sessions as it will take me is to get the two of them to look at each other. And this sounds ridiculous because remember, we are neurobiologically wired for connection. If you disconnect from an infant, they die. And whoever made that rule in this human race also made the rule that the hardest thing you will ever do is look into the eyes of the people you love. And the more disconnected we come, the harder it is to stay in love. And for the first time in history, in this generation, we have never had so many exit ramps. The ease to sink into somebody else, to have an affair, to feel that connection, that very peripheral connection somewhere else, to look at our phones, to watch Netflix instead of playing cards in the evening, we've never been this inundated by data. So at the end of the day, we just feel like, fuck it, I do not want to talk to anybody else right now, right? And it is the one thing that we need the most. This is such a profound number to me. It is estimated that our great-grandparents looked at their children 72% more of the time than we look at our babies.
Wait, say that again? Our grandparents.
Our great-grandparents.
Our great-grandparents.
Looked at their children 72% more of the time than we look at our babies. And one of the most important predicators of emotional regulation, of getting through the hard things, isn't the words or the strategies or the money. It is the physical presence of another human being who can just do this.
Looking right at you.
And okay, so one of my favorite pieces of research ever is by a guy named Anon. And his only protocol, he replicated this globally across industry and family. He said, all you got to do is look at somebody for 4 minutes. That's it. And so I was reading this research, and this is a while ago now, but I was reading this and I was like, how hard can it be? My personal husband and I, we got 6 degrees between us. I mean, we procreated a few times. I mean, I basically love him. Like, we're good. Why wouldn't we look at each other for 4 minutes? Like, I mean, obviously we do that all the time. So I went home and I said to I said to Aaron, I was like, I was reading this research today, babe, and I just want to try the thing. They say it's really hard, but like, I'm sure for us it'll be easy. Can you just sit down and look at me for 4 minutes? And you know what he said to me? Why?
Why?
I said, what do you mean, why? Like, look at me, I'm your bride. Huh? I had a lot of choices in 2008 and I landed you. So sit down.
Yeah, look at this.
And so he agrees, but begrudgingly, and he's a scientist by training, so he's got a spreadsheet for everything. So he said, can I time it? Like, I'll just get my watch out until I was like, oh, Jesus, like, God forbid we go over 4 minutes. But anyway, all right. So starts the timer. We sit together. We're looking at each other. It's the weirdest thing. And then not even 8 seconds in, he calls a timeout, like a big T. I was like, what do you mean timeout? And he said, I just have a couple questions. I was like, what? He said, so what am I looking for exactly here? Did you get a haircut? Is this a new shirt? Like what? I was like, oh my God. It was so much harder than we anticipated. And what's interesting is if you can make it, the first 30 seconds is usually a lot of like this is so dumb. Oh my God. Like how long? 4 minutes is so long. It's kind of, kitschy. If you make it to, the first minute, you start to notice things about them that you haven't seen for a while, right? Because we look all the time, but we don't see. And if you can make it to the 3.5, 4 minute mark, what you start to remember is all of the things that is written between you. That often happens without words. And, it was like at the end of those 4 minutes, I remembered what he looked like on our wedding day. I remembered that he was the guy that laid on the floor of the NICU when our twins were in the NICU for 8 days. And, he wouldn't leave me. Nobody else knew that, when I was watching him sleep on the floor and I was like, just go home. Like, I've got all the nurses. And he's like, not a chance. No, not happening. And I was like, oh, okay, those are the things that we forget when he says the stupid thing, or he's not there for the kids in the way that I wished he would be, or he doesn't have a kind word about my dad, or like whatever the thing is, right? And I think sometimes when we in this very disconnected world, the thing we are missing the most as we really want to talk about the importance of the depth of relationship, not the breadths of relationship, because those are easy to come by these days. You can Snapchat anybody. You can get on the Instagram and find your old lover. You can do anything you want to sort of feel that sort of breadth of connection. It is the depth of connection that is sacred.
How do you deepen your connections with other people in your life? We lack friendships, siblings, right? And it's like you can have relationships with people that can be so superficial, right? People you meet at school through your kids, like, hey, how's it going? You look cute, love your highlights, blah, blah, blah. You can have a girls' dinner. And it's either a lot of complaining or a lot of surface talk. How do you actually connect? It makes me want to like stare at some of my girlfriends for 4 minutes.
Do it.
Right? Like what? And there are times where I'm like, let's talk about something we're scared of. And then everyone's like, oh my God, like what? And then you start to break the ice. It's like, oh my God, did I tell you guys I've been on Zoloft since December? Wait, did I tell you guys that blah, blah, blah? I'm like, holy shit, someone just had to break the dam here. Right?
So you just answered your own question. How do you do this? How do you build these relationships on purpose?
On purpose. You can't stay at this top of the glacier level, right? There's so much under the water. And the beauty of it is you can be the conversational or the connection leader by knowing I'm going to bring something up that might feel a little awkward or ask a question because I really want to get to know you better, right? And I'm not saying when you're on a first date, start spewing about your crazy mom and your narcissistic father, right? Brene Brown says vulnerabilities without boundaries is oversharing, and that's not attractive, right? But it's connecting, talking about, even on a first date, for example, something that's quirky about yourself or something that you wouldn't maybe wear on a sandwich board, but you feel comfortable talking to your date about, or with your girlfriends that you want to go deeper with. Say, what are you nervous about right now? What's making you anxious? What spins your wheels at 3 a.m? What woman doesn't spin her wheels at 3 a.m. that has a big job and multiple kids? I don't know one.
Exactly. And I think it's a little bit of a really great barometer in terms of who you sit with. I mean, I often say this, sit with the winners and the conversation is different. And I pay close attention. It doesn't mean that you have to cut people out of your life who don't sort of fit in that category, but in your very finite, precious amount of time that you have on this planet, choose really wisely, especially the older you get, about who fills your soul, because it is so contagious. The futility of this world, because misery doesn't love company. Misery loves miserable company. And I want you to think a lot about, who do you leave the room from and you feel better for it? Which rooms do you enter and you feel like lighter than, oh God, oh Lord, what am I wearing? What are they thinking? Spend more time in rooms where you get to be creative and innovative. All of those things are indicative of emotional regulation. And that is where we are at our best self. Now, we often lose access to that, right? When we're exhausted or overwhelmed or work is heavy or we're going through the thing, we got the diagnosis, we're going through the divorce, whatever it is. We don't lose our ability to be amazing. We just lose access to it. And our best job is to figure out how to get back. I mean, that's the definition of burnout in the workplace, right? It's not indicative of the theory of burnout. It is indicative by the word that at one point there was a flame. And our job is often just to get back there, right? And so that's truly the place. We don't lose our ability to be amazing. We just lose access to it.
But it's there.
Yeah.
It just needs to be restoked, rekindled.
Yeah. Reconnected to. And often we bring the best out of other people. Here's a little dating trick for free. When you're acknowledged, you rise. Some of the best moves on the planet is to genuinely, sincerely, very much on purpose, acknowledge another human being. Really, the things that you admire the most about them, tell them. the things that you notice the most about them. I mean, and this is very true about strangers. I mean, I just feel like I'm more confident now, obviously, I think, than I was when I was dating. But I think now in my life, probably because I'm very much in love with my husband, I feel like I could fucking crush the dating world because I just see people and I'm like, hey, I travel a lot. I mean, I speak 200 times a year. And I was in this airport hotel. Jesus, just had a stroke there. I'm back. Airport hotel. And oh my gosh, it's so funny because, and sometimes in your head, you think you look terrible, but other times you think you look amazing. And so just went to the gym. I post this, COVID perimenopause place that I'm at. There's 20 more pounds on this body than I'd really like, but I am not getting smaller workout clothes. Or bigger workout clothes. So I just sucked in my sausage pants and my too small sports bra. And I went to the gym and I did a run and I came back and I stopped at the airport hotel to get a coffee. And so before I went back to my room, I was ordering the coffee and I saw this he wasn't young. He was in his 40s man, very attractive, I thought. And I was like, look at you, how hard you tried today. Your shoes match your belt. And, he was just there having his coffee and his breakfast. And I was like, I'm going to tell him he looks amazing. So I just went over and I just said to him, you know what? You look amazing today. I hope you have a great day and then I looked at myself and I was like, So he looks at me, he just says to me, bless your heart. Bless
your heart.
Bless your heart to me. Listen,
Alabama.
Oh my God. But in that moment, I just thought you have the ability at any given moment, particularly with the confidence that you sort of can land in yourself, tell people what you see in them, what you think about them. My husband and I were at this work conference and he is the exact opposite of me in so many ways, which is why we make such a great team. But, he's a bit reserved and conservative and all these things. And so we're mulling around all of these people in his workplace. And there was a guy that walked by and it was a legal firm that they were working with. And he had on glasses. I had tortoiseshell glasses on and he had very similar glasses. And I just said to him, oh my God, look at us. We have matching glasses. And he turned to me and he's like, hey, well, let me just get you a drink. And I was like, look how fucking easy that was. And then I was like, yes, and this is my husband. And Aaron said to me, did you know him? I was like, no. That's what you do. The bar now is so low. You just be nice to people and they're like, hi.
Right. I think I was telling you this story when I found out that you're from near Banff when we were podcast prepping, walked into a bike shop, rented e-bikes, right? Small fortune for four of us, for Jaden, Max, Andy, and me. And there was this adorable Brit. And I was like, you guys look like you're having so much fun here. I'm like, make me an offer I can't refuse. Would one of you take us on a tour? And this Brit looked at me and he's like, make me an offer I can't refuse. I'm taking you out for free right now. This man took us on a 3-hour e-bike ride, right? And all you have to do, it's like, you're having fun. You look great. Make me an offer I can't refuse, which is automatically saying, I'm enjoying being in your company.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I love that line. And it's like, just like you just say to him, oh my gosh, you look so interesting, or this looks fantastic. I love that shirt on you, or right. And like, it's such a safe sort of offer if you genuinely mean it.
If you genuinely mean it.
Genuinely mean it. Right? Like just go and make this world a better place and you will attract the people who need to feel seen. And when they feel seen in your presence, then your idea is to establish whether they're worthy enough to see you.
And you wrote this book called Feeling Seen, and you've given us so many gems. I mean, look into each other's eyes, connect with people, be around people that regulate you, and hopefully you can regulate, and look for what's good in people, see them, and importantly, don't just see it in your brain and put it into your hard drive, swallow it and move on. Have a think speak moment, speak it into existence. Tell this person, you look amazing. And even if he says, bless your heart, you're like, wow, he just blessed my heart. We connected.
I bet
Bless
he
his
has
heart.
thought about that moment for many, many times, because particularly we don't do this a lot, right? And you don't need to be big and over the top and embarrass people. I mean, some of the best conversations or the best compliments are like, you look great today, or like, you have the best smile, or, wave to people. Try that. Right. I met the best, most incredible human. He was on my podcast not very long ago in the airport. We got 5 hours delayed in Vegas. And this couple, who we now later learned that they're married, and he's like the world's strongest gay man. I fell in love with these two people, and we had the best conversation, because it was just like, here we are in this airport, strike up a conversation. What do you got to lose if they're like, okay, thanks, then you go sit somewhere else. Like, but it's just not that hard.
It's not that hard. It's so funny. I feel like we're so vibrationally synced. One of the big things that we do at Smart Dating Academy to help people really get out of their heads, get out of their own way, dating red flag people, is to sit down and identify in their life what we call their elevator people. Why elevator? Because they elevate you. Who are those people in your lives? And then we go through elevator person by elevator person, and each individual person has a theme. And what makes you happy in your happiest relationships? Right?
Ooh,
and
that's a good one.
That's the checklist you should be using in the dating world. I did a TED Talk about this 2 years ago. It's like, look for what's good. And so often what I hear about the elevator people in my clients' lives is they're always there for me, and they make me feel really good about myself. They see me, they encourage me, they think I can do anything. And now what's important about that? They think I can do anything, but implicit in that is they tell me that. They make me feel that way, and that elevates me.
I love that. And would you talk to them on an elevator?
Absolutely. My father-in-law was like, elevator people, like giving your elevator pitch. I'm like, no, people that elevate you. And then like an elevator, they also keep you grounded and safe.
Yes. Oh, I love that. You're so smart.
Person. You're an elevator.
Why wouldn't we be? Like, you're not getting out of here alive. So give it all you got.
Oh my gosh. I wrote the quote down from Ram Dass, right?
That good?
Where did it go?
We're all just here.
We're all just here walking each other home. Goosebumps, massive goosebumps. Bumps, not goosebumps. I mean, Dr. Jody Carrington, you are amazing. Where, besides coming on my podcast again in the near future, which you have an open invitation to do because you're awesome and an elevator person, tell us where we can get more of you.
Oh my gosh, I would love your community to be in our community. I am drjodycarrington.com, and I spend a lot of time on Instagram and a little bit of time on TikTok and Facebook and all those places. But I have courses, and I do lives on Sunday night, and our podcast, Everyone Comes From Somewhere, starts in October.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait for your podcast.
I know. I can't wait for you to be on my podcast. So stay tuned, daters.
Stay tuned, smart daters. It's a podcast swap right here. You witnessed it. So thank you so much for being with us today on the day that you moved homes. I'm so grateful that you did this. I'm grateful to have a new friend in Alberta, Canada. And smart daters, I hope you know that you are seen. You are seen by us. You are seen by so many people. And if you're feeling disconnected, think about the love that you do have in your life. Think about the people who you know see you. Reach out to them, acknowledge them, tell them how much you appreciate them. Put some love into the world, because you know what? Putting love into the world, it's a boomerang. It is inevitable that it will come back to you. So on that note, I will see you next week, and have a week full of psychotically optimistic, loving dates. And I will see you in a couple days.